For more than a century, it has haunted our collective imagination. A creature of such impossible scale and terrifying power that its very name has become a synonym for the ultimate predator. Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king. Since its discovery in the bone-rich badlands of North America, it has been the undisputed icon of the dinosaur age. A monster resurrected from stone, a biological sledgehammer that ruled the final days of the Cretaceous period. For decades, our understanding of this animal was built almost entirely on its colossal skeleton, a framework of bone that spoke of immense strength and devastating weaponry. The 5-foot-long skull, the railroad-spiked teeth, the 9-ton frame, these were the tangible facts. And from these facts, an image was born. The image of a brutish, slow-moving, and above all dim-witted monster. This early interpretation was not without logic. It was rooted in the science of the time, which viewed dinosaurs through the lens of modern reptiles. Scientists looked at crocodiles and lizards, creatures driven by cold-blooded instinct and possessing relatively small, simple brains, and extrapolated. If T-Rex was the king of the reptiles, it must have been, in essence, a crocodile scaled up to the size of a bus. Its life was imagined as a simple, programmatic existence. Hunt, eat, sleep, repeat. Its actions were thought to be driven by the most primitive parts of its brain, with little room for strategy, social complexity, or anything resembling higher intelligence. The tyrant was fearsome, yes, but it was a mindless tyrant, an automaton of muscle and teeth. This view was reinforced by early physical reconstructions. The first mounted skeletons of T-Rex depicted a lumbering, tail-dragging beast, an upright Godzilla-like behemoth whose posture suggested a slow, ponderous gait. This physical clumsiness seemed to perfectly match the presumed mental clumsiness. The idea of a fast, agile, or even moderately intelligent T-Rex seemed as far-fetched as the idea of a flying elephant. The prevailing scientific consensus painted a picture of an animal that was more of a walking natural disaster than a calculating hunter. Its success was attributed not to its intellect, but to its overwhelming size and strength alone. It didn't need to be smart. It just needed to be big. For most of the 20th century, this was the T-Rex of record. It was the monster in the museum hall and the villain on the movie screen. Its brain, if considered at all, was assumed to be a tiny, insignificant knot of nerve tissue, just enough to operate the basic functions of its enormous body. Paleontologists could measure the length of its femur and the force of its bite, but its mind remained a locked box, a dark continent within its fossilized skull. The very idea of decoding its brain would have sounded like science fiction. But science is a relentless process of discovery, and the tools of discovery are constantly evolving. The image of the dim-witted, tail-dragging monster began to crumble in the latter half of the 20th century during a period known as the Dinosaur Renaissance. New discoveries and new ways of thinking led to a radical revaluation of dinosaurs as a whole. They were reimagined as active, dynamic, and potentially warm-blooded animals, more akin to birds than to modern lizards. The T-Rex was given a new posture, its tail held aloft as a counterbalance. Its body pitched forward in a far more athletic and terrifying hunting pose. It was faster, it was more active, and with this physical renaissance came the first tantalizing questions about its mental renaissance. If its body was more sophisticated than we thought, what about its brain? The key to unlocking that dark continent lay hidden inside the most robust part of its skeleton, the brain case. The brain itself, being soft tissue, rots away within days of death. It never fossilizes. But the bony cavity that housed it, the brain case, preserves a ghostly impression of the brain's shape and size. For decades, scientists could get a rough idea of this shape by carefully cleaning out the fossilized sediment from inside the skull, creating a physical endocast of the empty space. But this was a destructive and imprecise process. The true revolution would have to wait for a technology that could see through solid rock. The advent of computed tomography, or CT scanning, changed everything. This medical imaging technology, designed to look inside the human body, could also be used to look inside the fossilized skull of a dinosaur. By taking hundreds or thousands of X-ray slices, a computer could digitally reconstruct the internal cavity of the brain case in three-dimensional space with astonishing detail. For the first time, paleontologists could create a perfect, non-destructive digital endocast of the Tyrannosaurus rex brain. They could finally see the size and shape of the organ that drove the tyrant king. And what they saw began to shatter the myth of the mindless monster forever. The journey to decode the brain of T-Rex had truly begun. Its first revelations would come not from its thoughts, but from the very senses that it used to perceive its world. The digital reconstruction of the Tyrannosaurus rex brain endocast was a landmark moment in paleontology. For the first time, scientists had a detailed, three-dimensional map of the organ that controlled the most fearsome predator on Earth. This digital ghost, pulled from the stone of the brain case, could not tell us what the dinosaur was thinking. But it could reveal the relative size and development of the different regions of its brain. And by comparing these regions to those of modern animals, we can begin to understand what was important to a T-Rex. The first and most obvious revelations came from the parts of the brain dedicated to its senses. A predator is only as good as its ability to find its prey, and the endocast revealed that T-Rex was equipped with a sensory suite that was far more sophisticated than anyone had ever imagined. The first clue to its sensory world lay in a pair of large, prominent lobes at the very front of the brain, the olfactory bulbs. These are the regions of the brain that process the sense of smell. In the T-Rex brain, the olfactory bulbs were enormous, both in absolute terms and relative to the overall size of its brain. To understand just how significant this is, we can compare it to modern animals. In humans, the sense of smell is a secondary sense, and our olfactory bulbs are tiny. In a dog, known for its keen nose, the olfactory bulbs are much larger. The olfactory bulbs of a T-Rex were proportionally even larger than those of a dog. This anatomical evidence strongly suggests that T-Rex possessed an extraordinary sense of smell. It lived its life in a world of complex scents, and its brain was heavily wired to interpret them. This super-smeller capability would have been a critical tool for a predator. It could have detected the scent of a herd of Triceratops or Edmontosaurus from miles away, allowing it to track its prey over vast distances. It would have also been an invaluable tool for scavenging. The scent of a fresh carcass would carry for miles on the wind, leading the tyrant king to an easy meal. This powerful sense of smell paints a picture not of a bumbling monster, but of a sophisticated tracker. An animal that could read the chemical story of its environment with incredible fidelity. It was a hunter that could find its prey long before it could see it. But when it did see its prey, the view was spectacular. For a long time, it was assumed that T-Rex, like a lizard, had eyes on the sides of its head, giving it poor depth perception. The fossil skulls, however, tell a different story. The orbits, the bony sockets that held the eyes, were positioned in a way that allowed the eyes to face forward. This forward-facing orientation is the key to stereoscopic or binocular vision. By having two eyes looking at the same object from slightly different angles, the brain can stitch the two images together to create a true, three-dimensional perception of the world. This is the same type of vision possessed by eagles, hawks, humans, predators, and primates who rely on accurately judging distances. The T-Rex had a field of binocular vision of about 55 degrees, which is wider than that of a modern hawk. This superb depth perception would have been a vital weapon. For a predator needing to land a precise, bone-crushing bite on a dangerous, struggling animal like a Triceratops, the ability to accurately judge the distance to the target was a matter of life and death. A misjudged lunge could result in a fatal wound from a horn. The T-Rex was not just looking at its world, it was seeing it in high-definition 3D. Furthermore, studies of the skull and eye socket size suggest that T-Rex had some of the largest eyes of any land animal that has ever lived. Large eyes can gather more light, which translates to better visual acuity, the ability to see fine detail. Some scientists have even calculated that the visual acuity of a T-Rex may have been up to 13 times better than that of a human. An object that would be a blur to us at a distance would have been in sharp focus for the tyrant king. It could have spotted potential prey from several kilometers away, giving it a commanding view of its hunting grounds. The sensory tour continues deep within the brain case, into the region of the inner ear. The CT scans revealed the delicate looping structures of the semicircular canals, which are responsible for balance and spatial awareness. But they also revealed a particularly long cochlea. In modern animals, the length of the cochlea is directly correlated with the range of frequencies an animal can hear. The long cochlea of the T-Rex suggests that it had a highly sensitive sense of hearing, particularly in the low-frequency range. This ability to hear low-frequency sounds would have been another crucial predatory tool. The heavy footsteps of a multi-ton hadrosaur or ceratopsian would produce powerful, low-frequency vibrations that travel long distances through the ground and the air. The T-Rex could have literally heard the approach of its prey long before it was visible or even smellable. It's also possible that tyrannosaurs themselves used low-frequency rumbles, below the threshold of human hearing, to communicate with each other over long distances, a secret language of tyrants echoing across the Cretaceous plains. When we combine these sensory inputs, the world-class sense of smell, the eagle-like binocular vision, and the acute low-frequency hearing, a new picture of the T-Rex emerges. This was not a dull, reactive creature stumbling through its environment. This was a sensory genius. It was an animal that perceived its world with a richness and clarity that we can barely imagine. It was constantly gathering and processing a huge amount of data about its surroundings. This sensory sophistication alone points to a brain that was far more complex than previously believed. But the most tantalizing question remained. What was it doing with all of this information? To answer that, we must look beyond the sensory lobes and into the heart of the brain itself, the cerebrum. The revelations from the sensory regions of the Tyrannosaurus rex brain were revolutionary, transforming it from a dullard into a sensory virtuoso. But perception is only the first step. The ultimate measure of an animal's intelligence lies not in what it can sense, but in how it processes that information. The key to understanding the cognitive abilities of the tyrant king lies in the largest part of its brain, the cerebrum. This is the region responsible for higher-order functions: memory, problem-solving, and strategic thought. By examining the size and proportions of the T-Rex cerebrum, we can begin to move beyond its senses and make educated inferences about its behavior and intellect. The first and most fundamental metric is the overall size of the brain relative to its body. This is often expressed as the encephalization quotient, or EQ. A simple brain-to-body mass ratio can be misleading. An elephant's brain is much larger than a human's in absolute terms, but not relative to its enormous body. The EQ provides a more standardized measure. For decades, the T-Rex was assumed to have an EQ comparable to that of a modern crocodile, placing it squarely in the primitive reptile category of intelligence. However, the detailed endocasts produced by CT scanning allowed for a much more accurate estimation of the brain's volume. When paleontologists performed these new calculations, the results were surprising. The EQ of T-Rex was found to be significantly higher than that of a crocodile. In fact, it fell comfortably within the range of some modern birds. This was a critical finding. It suggested that the cognitive hardware of a T-Rex was not on par with the typical reptile, but was more akin to that of the animals now recognized as its closest living relatives. This bird brain discovery opened up a whole new world of possibilities for T-Rex behavior. Modern birds, particularly corvids, crows, ravens, and parrots, are renowned for their remarkable intelligence. They exhibit complex problem-solving skills, the ability to use tools, excellent memories, and in many cases, intricate social lives. While no one is suggesting that a T-Rex was capable of using tools, its bird-like brain volume implies a level of cognitive sophistication that would have made it a far more formidable predator than a simple, instinct-driven reptile. This enhanced cognitive ability would have manifested in its hunting strategies. The old image of a T-Rex mindlessly charging at its prey no longer holds up. A predator with a large cerebrum would have been capable of true strategy. It could learn from past experiences, remembering which hunting techniques were successful and which were not. It could assess a situation, identify the weakest or most vulnerable member of a herd, and formulate a plan of attack. It could engage in ambush predation, using its knowledge of the landscape to lie in wait for prey to come to it. This was not a mindless monster. 8. This was a calculating, thinking hunter. The evidence for this cognitive sophistication is not just theoretical. It is hinted at in the fossil record. We have found Triceratops skulls with healed T-Rex bite marks. This tells us two things. First, the hunt was a dangerous, dynamic struggle where the prey could and did fight back successfully. Second, The T-Rex survived the encounter. It learned a valuable, painful lesson about how not to attack a multi-ton, horned-faced adversary. A creature with a more primitive brain might not have survived, or if it did, it might not have been able to process the experience and change its future behavior. The T-Rex could learn, adapt, and become a better hunter over time. Furthermore, the possibility of social behavior in T-Rex adds another layer to its intelligence. As previously discussed, fossil sites containing multiple tyrannosaur individuals suggest they may have lived in groups. If T-Rex was a social animal, it would have required an even greater level of cognitive power. Social living demands the ability to recognize individuals, to understand social hierarchies, to communicate effectively, and to cooperate towards a common goal, such as raising young or hunting. Imagine a pack of these 9-ton, intelligent predators working together. They could have employed complex, cooperative hunting strategies far beyond the capability of any solitary animal. Younger, faster individuals could have herded prey towards the larger, more powerful matriarch. They could have used flanking maneuvers to surround and confuse their victims. This level of coordinated action would require a brain capable of planning, communication, and understanding the roles of other members of the group. The social tyrannosaur is a far more terrifying prospect than the lone wolf, and it is a prospect made plausible by the size and complexity of its brain. A recent, more controversial study published in 2023 by neuroscientist Susanna Herculano-Hosel took this line of reasoning a step further. By examining the relationship between brain mass and neuron count in modern reptiles and birds, she extrapolated the potential number of neurons in the T-Rex cerebrum. Her conclusion was startling, that a T-Rex could have possessed as many as 3 billion cerebral neurons, a number comparable to that of a modern baboon. A baboon is a highly intelligent social primate, capable of complex problem-solving and cultural transmission of knowledge. If this estimation is even remotely accurate, it would place the cognitive abilities of T-Rex in a completely different realm. An animal with a baboon-like neuron count would not just be a smart hunter. It would be a creature with a rich inner life, capable of sophisticated thought and possessing a level of intelligence that would make it one of the most formidable minds, as well as one of the most formidable bodies in the history of life on Earth. This theory, however, remains a subject of intense scientific debate, with many paleontologists arguing that neuron count alone is not a direct measure of intelligence. But the very fact that such a debate is happening is a testament to how far we have come from the image of the dim-witted monster. The evidence from the brain case to the fossil trackways is converging on a single, powerful conclusion. The tyrant lizard king was not just a brute, it was a genius. The journey to decode the brain of Tyrannosaurus Rex has taken us from the dusty assumption of a pie-brained monster to the cutting edge of neuroscience, revealing a creature of remarkable sensory acuity and surprising cognitive potential. We have seen how its powerful sense of smell, its eagle-eyed binocular vision, and its acute low-frequency hearing created a rich, detailed perception of its world. We have explored how the sheer size of its cerebrum and its bird-like encephalization quotient point towards a mind capable of strategy, learning, and potentially complex social behavior. The question that remains is, how do we synthesize this information into a cohesive portrait of the living, thinking animal? What was it truly like to be a T-Rex? To answer this, we must move beyond the individual components of the brain and imagine the integrated system at work. The true genius of the T-Rex mind was not just in having a good sense of smell or good vision. It was in the brain's ability to fuse these powerful data streams into a single, coherent, and dynamic model of its environment. This is a process known as sensory integration, and it is a hallmark of an advanced predatory brain. Imagine a mature T-Rex on the hunt. The first hint of prey might not be a sight or a sound, but a faint scent carried on the wind, detected by its enormous olfactory bulbs from miles away.
Ow.
This scent provides a direction. As the predator begins to move, its sensitive ears, tuned to the low-frequency spectrum, pick up the distant rhythmic thud of multi-ton footsteps. This auditory information refines the direction and provides an estimate of the number and size of the animals ahead. The tyrant is now building a mental map of a situation that is still far over the horizon. As it closes the distance, Using its knowledge of the terrain to stay concealed, its powerful eyes come into play. From a vantage point, it can now see the herd. Its superb visual acuity allows it to pick out individuals to assess their health and age. Its binocular vision gives it a perfect three-dimensional understanding of the distances involved. The brain is now integrating three powerful streams of information: scent, sound, and sight. It is no longer just tracking. It is strategizing. It is evaluating risk and reward. Is it better to attack the large but slow adult or the small but fast juvenile? Is the herd alert or complacent? If it is part of a social group, this is the point where communication and coordination would be critical. A silent language of rumbles and postures to formulate a group plan. This ability to integrate multiple sensory inputs and formulate a plan is a world away from the simple, reactive behavior of a crocodile, which typically relies on a single stimulus, the sight of an animal at the water's edge, to trigger an instinctive lunge. The T-Rex was a proactive, not reactive hunter. It was playing chess while other predators were playing checkers. The implications of this cognitive sophistication extend beyond the hunt. A creature with this level of brainpower would have a complex life. It would possess a detailed mental map of its vast territory, remembering the locations of water sources, good ambush spots, and the seasonal migration routes of its prey. It would have a memory of past encounters, both with prey and with rival tyrannosaurs. A painful defeat at the hands of a bull triceratops would be seared into its memory, informing all future interactions with that species. If it was a social animal, its cognitive world would be even richer. It would navigate a complex web of social relationships, understanding its place in the hierarchy, forming bonds, and potentially engaging in cooperative parenting. The image of two adult T-Rex carefully guarding a nest of eggs, teaching their young the intricate art of the hunt, is a scenario made entirely plausible by our modern understanding of its brain. This was not just an eating machine. It was a creature with a life, a history, and a future. So, how smart was a T-Rex? The precise answer is something we may never know for certain. We cannot administer an IQ test to an animal that has been dead for 66 million years. The controversial theory of a baboon-like neuron count remains a tantalizing but unproven hypothesis. What we can say with a high degree of confidence is this: Tyrannosaurus rex was far more intelligent than we ever gave it credit for. It was not a dim-witted reptilian brute. It was a sensory and cognitive marvel, a perfect fusion of overwhelming physical power and sophisticated mental processing. It possessed an intelligence that was, at a minimum, on par with that of the most intelligent modern birds, and was likely far more complex than that. It was a strategic, learning predator capable of solving the complex problems presented by its environment and its well-defended prey. The true legacy of the tyrant lizard king is not just its size or the power of its bite. It is the revelation that one of the largest and most powerful predators in Earth's history was also one of the smartest. The decoding of its brain has given us the final and perhaps most terrifying piece of the puzzle. The king of the dinosaurs ruled not just through brute force, but through a brilliant, calculating, and formidable mind. The ultimate predator was also the ultimate predator psychologist.